I record the conference, as you, so that we can post it for everybody else later on. If anyone has a problem with that, just let me know.
I have a problem with that.
You do, Michael?
Just kidding.
So it looks like we're still getting a few more people here.
This is Tom Dumas from 10 Planning.
Okay, I think it's 1:02. It doesn't look like we're getting anybody else new. This is Caroline Rodier, and we are having our November TAC meeting for the Shared Use Mobility Services project in the San Joaquin Valley. Thank you all for joining us today. I'll hand it over to Michael in just a minute, but the purpose of the meeting today is basically to give a brief overview of the interim report we submitted to you all and is now posted on the NCST website at UC Davis, and then to talk kind of about next steps, what we're planning for as we close out the project in June of 2016. So, Michael, do you want to take it over from here? Roll call and all that?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks everyone for calling in. Again, we haven't talked in a while, but we've been working in various different dimensions to keep this project online and moving forward. As you know, we did a couple of grant applications, and we can talk about those as well to support and augment some of this work on the implementation side. As Caroline will get into on the draft report, things really haven't changed from where we left you last time in terms of two major concepts for the Valley. So we'll go over that in a sec, but let me go ahead and do roll call. I'll start with the MPOs, north to south. Do we have anybody from San Joaquin Council of Governments?
Diane Nguyen.
Hi, Diane.
And Rob Cunningham.
Okay, hi, Rob. Okay, anybody from Stanislaus?
Elizabeth Hahn, Stephen Hanamaikai, and Isel Ojeda.
Oh, the whole crew. Okay, very good. Anybody from Merced?
Mauricio Torres.
Okay, I'll have to add you. He's on the bottom. Thanks. Rich Green is no longer at MCAG. Is that what I hear?
That's correct.
Okay, and you are?
I am his staff service. Staff service analyst.
Okay, what was your name again?
Mauricio Torres.
Mauricio Torres. Got it. Okay. All right. And moving right along here, Madera. Anybody from Madera?
Hi, Amelia Davies.
Hi, Amelia. Okay. How about Fresno Council of Governments?
Hi, it's Try.
I try. Moses Sites, are you on? Okay.
I know
Kings
he's
County.
going to join.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. Kings County.
Hi, it's Teresa Nichols.
Okay, hi, Teresa. Anybody else from Kings? Tulare County.
Hi, Elizabeth Forte here, and I think Kasha Thompson will be joining us in a minute.
All right, thank you. Current Council of Governments. Anyone from Kern? Okay, so other people I have, we have Laura and Caroline. And then Angela
Laura's
Shepard.
not here today.
Laura is not in.
No,
okay.
She's not here. But it looks like Suzanne is trying to call in from Kern. I know they were going to attend.
Okay. Caltrans, I have Angela Shepard. Nope. And then Lorena from District 6 has called in. Nicholas from District 10, are you on? Okay, Tom Dumas from 10 is on. Did I miss anyone else?
Yes, Moses Stites just joined.
Okay, hi Moses. All right, very good. Okay, all right, we're good to go, Caroline.
Okay, so I'm going to go, some of this is maybe review for you, but I'm going to try to go through this pretty quickly, and then we can kind of talk about next steps. So, let me see. So we're all familiar with the problem that we're dealing with, Central Valley. We've been struggling with that. How it's difficult to provide cost-effective transit service in more remote rural areas. And a lot of the people who live in the remote or rural areas in the San Joaquin Valley lack access to automobiles because of high levels of poverty. Okay, so the central research question, again, just to remind us all, where might shared use mobility services expand accessibility in rural disadvantaged communities at a cost at or below currently available transit services? To answer this question, we all work together to operationalize the definition of rural disadvantaged communities, the quality of existing transit service, and the relative cost of transit and shared use modes for key destinations. And then in the next slide here, we see these are the areas that we identified as potential locations. We used the census tracts as a unit of analysis. We focused our disadvantaged communities, those communities that ranked at the top 25 California EnviroScreen rankings. And then we also identified rural areas as fairly broadly as meeting one or more state or federal definitions. Okay. And then, for our first cut analysis, we looked at ride sourcing, which is, similar to TNC, ride splitting, that would be where two people are sharing a TNC, and then round-trip car sharing, station-based car sharing where you check it out at one place and return it to the next place. And then we added a slightly different concept is round-trip split car sharing, where we would, one or more paying passengers could reserve a car sharing vehicle if they were going to a similar place. Okay, so one of the things we did in this study is, there was uncertainty around ride sourcing cost estimates, right? So because most ride sourcing services right now are located in cities where you've got a high concentration of activities in a smaller geographic area. So you've got shorter distances, and drivers have got a pretty good chance of securing a return trip passengers. However, in rural areas, you've got a problem because we have, low population densities and long distances, and a much lower chance of securing a return passenger, which may make it hard for, an Uber or Lyft driver to break even on a trip. It's the same problem that transit providers face, really. So, okay. Right. So what we did is we basically looked at, what net driver revenue would be. So we looked at, basically what they were being paid based on Fresno Uber fare. And we assumed that the driver would take 80% of the Uber fare, which is actually higher than what I read now I read it would be, it's about 75%, and it doesn't include the minimum charge. And then minus the full cost.
You see someone talking in the background. I'm wondering if you could have everybody mute so we can hear you better.
Is that better? So minus the full cost, and we're including, if for the time cost, if people were being paid full, minimum wage, and the distance cost, which is a federal reimbursement rate of 0.54 cost per mile. So, and we can see here, let me see if I can give you more details here. If both the mileage and the hourly costs for our destinations, our origin and destination locations that we're considering for the kind of universe of census tract for these studies, they would be actually losing money. Most drivers would be losing money based on our analysis. So if you so that's true for the gray area where we have mileage and hourly wage adjusted net revenues, and then if you only consider mileage, they're still losing. However, if they're making some money if you do hourly wage adjusted. So that creates a problem for using kind of traditional ride sourcing services in these rural areas, and getting drivers who are willing to do that type of work. Okay, so just going back to, so in the next slide here, I show you how we specify our different alternatives. Remember, we got all the information about what the transit cost was and their frequency and all that sort of thing. For the low ride sourcing costs, we use the current base fare. For the high ride sourcing costs, we're using, the full cost, say for 54 cents per mile and minimum wage. Ride splitting, we use the low ride sourcing cost, and we subtracted $5 just for our first cut analysis. For ride sharing, we assume $4.50 per hour in a 3-hour trip. And for split car sharing, we cut the ride sharing cost in half. And then this next slide shows what we came up with for the region. This is for all the census tracts that we identified in our study. So here we see in the first, at the top we're looking at high ride sourcing, low ride sourcing, ride splitting car sharing, split car sharing. So we can see that, in a lot of places, transit is less expensive than, say, ride sourcing, so 48%. And low ride sourcing, it's 33%. So transit is still doing a pretty good job in many of these areas. And if you look, average increase in cost with shared use mode, if some of these cost-effective transit lines were eliminated, residents could be, people who are using these could face, a significant increase in the cost of traveling. So what this analysis really says is that we really want to make sure that we're supporting, the high-quality transit service that is available, and that would be hard to replace by other services. So that's kind of one of the lessons learned here. However, if we go to the row below, shared use is less expensive than current transit services. You can see that, there is opportunity there as well. So particularly for split ride sharing, if we can do that, and car sharing, and that there are possibilities for significant savings over transit. So you've got kind of two stories here. There probably, there are opportunities for us to implement these shared use services, but we've really got to make sure we're protecting our cost-effective transit services. Okay, so this next slide is a map where we identified where, kind of our different use case scenarios based on our analysis, where we thought there were promising options. So the picture farthest to the right, ride sourcing, ride splitting versus fixed route transit. These are where there may be cost-effective options here. And then the next, in the middle, we have ride sourcing and ride splitting versus dial-a-ride transit. So we see we have a lot more opportunities here. And then the largest, where we have lots and lots of opportunities, perhaps is where we have ride sharing versus fixed route and dial-a-ride transit. So we have quite a few areas here where we might see benefit. So, just to go over, influential pilot projects, I think I've shared this with most of you before. There's a program in Needles, California with Victor Valley Transit Authority, and that has been, Needles is a small area. They've located a few cars in a centrally located credit union, and it's operating it largely, self-sustaining since August 2016. So it's, isolated urban area, which is where we're kind of looking to implement many of these pilots. So that provides some glimmer of hope here. And then car sharing and affordable housing, as we know, the California Air Resources Board is very interested in funding these. There are cases where they've been implemented in Denver, successfully. Some of the Sacramento car share, it looks like that's kind of struggling right now. And there have been other programs in Portland that have started up and then had some problems. So we have to be really careful about how we launch these services to make sure that they are self-sustaining. So transit gap ride sourcing pilots, many areas, they are cognizant of the potential for TNCs to undercut, existing transit service. Transit service is a good job. So that is doing a good job. So that's really been focused, it's first and last mile access and in gaps in service. And many of these pilots, some of them, the first and last mile, there's still, some of them have started and then closed down. Many more are starting. I think transit agencies are starting to get smarter about demanding data from the TNCs in order to, to evaluate like what's working and what's not working. Apparently in the Centennial first and last mile pilot, people just kept using the dial-a-ride. For whatever reason, they just weren't using the lift line. I reviewed the report, and they were not, the evaluation was pretty much data-free. So there wasn't much information about what had actually happened. But, there's another pilot in Dublin some of you may be familiar with. It looks like they're going to get data now. And I know there's a similar first last mile pilot being planned in Sacramento, and they're looking to get data. In fact, they won't fund the project. SACOG won't fund it without the data. So I think, those types of things are promising, and we'll get more information about kind of what works and what doesn't work. Okay. Having a hard time. There we go. Okay, so I've kind of talked about this in the report in more detail, but again, we want to protect our cost-effective transit routes. You know, a lot of these shared use mobilities might expand auto access. If we're looking to attract money from the California Air Resources, other agencies, we also, and meet, you know, our climate change reduction goals, looking at low emission and zero emission vehicles for these shared use programs are, you know, something we really want to look into. Again, ride splitting, we found was pretty cost effective in our analysis, but, you know, again, that's hard because we don't have the, you know, we don't have the spatial and temporal intensity of demand. So what we are, you know, as we kind of explored pilot projects, we're looking at book ahead so that we have time to group travelers together, looking at local drivers. Some of these communities, they're, you know, far away from employment opportunities. You know, they may be more willing to, you know, do some shorter trips. We may be able to work with them to provide kind of a cost-effective wage for them. And then also looking at the opportunities for volunteer transportation organizations. You know, if we can provide more subsidies, you know, we may be able to recruit more people to participate in these groups. So, you know, and again, our analysis, you know, affordable housing, they can be pockets of relative high density in rural areas, and they have some infrastructure to support shared use services, you know, community rooms, you know, for new developments, they may have line item budgets to support ongoing services, operation and maintenance of services. ADA requirements, you know, we'll see when we develop some of the pilot, it limits some of our options for first and last mile services and addressing the high costs of dial-a-ride services. And then, you know, there was a lot of discussion that outreach and education is really important when you're developing these pilots and trying to recruit participants. So in our review of existing pilots. So, you know, as you all know, we kind of came together, you know, in the spring, and we kind of presented our initial analysis to, you know, the MPO directors, and there was a direction to move forward on 2 pilot concepts, and we did ultimately submit those pilot concepts to the California Air Resources Board for their cap and trade funding. So the 2 concepts were Valley Go and Valley Flex. We also kind of reached out to people in the summer about potentially developing a California Energy Commission project, and we ended up being able to do that with Merced. But there wasn't, due to, you know, other difficulties, we weren't able to, some people weren't eligible, some counties weren't eligible, so they couldn't move forward on it, and there were just different reasons. So the CEC project, we did make the cutoff, but it was not funded. So I don't know, Michael, do you want to, what can we say about the California Air Resources Board funding for these pilot concepts that we submitted at this point?
Yeah, so the 2 pilot concepts you're seeing on your screen, those are the ones covering 3 counties that we did submit for a very large ARB shared mobility pilot concept. It was awarded, it was funded, it was like $2.2 million to the Valley. We have other matching and in-kind in there as well, so it's a bigger project than that. So I think as the people that were engaged in it recall, there was a lot of back and forth and a lot of details in those concepts. But the bottom line is ARB did award them. The San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District is the lead on this grant application. They submitted it on behalf of us collectively. So the Air Pollution Control District did take this award to their board already, and the ability to contract with subcontractors, including UC Davis, the MPOs, people like myself, is forthcoming as soon as ARB sends the templates and other information to the Air District. So we're waiting right now for ARB to send information to the Air District, and then we can begin with these. And what they are is just implementation steps for these two concepts. So it would go in line with what work we were going to do eventually anyway, but actually implement the projects as well. So Caroline, I hope that answers your question. We can sort of tell. We can answer the answer is yes. We got the money, and we're waiting for the logistics to shake out a little bit.
And we chose these concepts in part, and I think ARB is very interested in these projects because we also identified other areas in the valley. You know, if these experimental pilots are successful, you know, perhaps we can apply for additional money to try to implement them elsewhere throughout the valley. Because as you could see from this slide here, I mean, there are lots of opportunities. And throughout the valley for these different concepts and, you know, slightly different versions of the concepts. So we can talk about, you know, kind of at the end of the call what we might want to do moving forward. It looks like their ARB is starting this administrator process whereby, and I don't know, it may take a year or two, whereby small entities can apply directly without this huge kind of process to put projects together. So local jurisdictions could form partnerships and apply directly for the cap and trade funds. I'm not sure what's going to happen this spring, whether there'll be you know, another opportunity to apply for cap and trade funds, if there are other areas in the valley who are interested in moving forward for those applications. You know, I'd be happy to talk to you and see if there's you know, some way we could work together on those applications.
Right, and I misspoke. It's 4 counties: Tulare and Kern as part of one concept, and Stanislaus and San Joaquin in the other.
Yeah, and I'm hoping, Moses, you know, in a little bit you could tell us what's going on in Fresno. There's been a lot of activity in Fresno, right?
Yes, with regard to?
The TCC funding?
Yeah, that's primarily in the city.
Communities and the Green Raiteros?
Yeah, that's primarily in the city of Fresno, but the Green Raiteros, if you want me to chime in now or do you want to
that'd
me
be
to wait?
Great.
Okay. The Green Raiteros program, I spoke with Ray Leone, and they've teamed up with Shared Mobility Center, and they're in the process of basically getting the program off the ground. They're going to implement it with the purchase of bulk vehicles, and they're going to coordinate with FCRTA and one of our sub-grantees for dispatching and training services of drivers, which is good. We're not going to operate any of the systems because one of the problems as a public transit operator, which you touched on lightly, is the fact that these TNCs are not ADA equipped. For the most part, and I can only speak for FCRTA, we're 100% ADA accessible, so all our vehicles either have a wheelchair lift or a ramp. Unfortunately, with the TNCs, Uber, Lyft, and the others, very far and few between that are accessible unless you reserve it way in advance. So for us, we're still, the jury's still out for us on that, but we coordinate in other ways. So with Green Raiteros, we're going to help them with driver training, dispatching, and so forth. And then with Just Transit, the 2 recent allocations for that foundation money that came out. My understanding is that Leadership Council was awarded approximately $80,000. They currently have a vehicle in use in the Cantua Creek area, and the residents are currently using it. It's a Tesla. It's an $85,000 Tesla. However, the lease payments are a little excessive. They're about $1,800 a month plus. So for a public entity to go out and lease a Tesla at that kind of money, we don't want to make the front page headlines. We want to make the back page headlines. So it's not really conducive for us to do that. But my understanding is it's off the ground.
It might not be sustainable.
Anyway, I try to move through that quickly. Thank you.
Okay.
So you have to look at the sustainability, and so it's important that you look at the type of vehicles that you're going to engage in or procure, because perception is everything. And if you have a governing board, it's pretty hard to sell those kind of things to elected officials. So that's why I mentioned the two extremes. The Bolts purchased at $35,000 each versus a lease of a $85,000 Tesla at $1,800 a month plus. So, you know, those are things to keep in mind when you're working through this, and hopefully we can get through it. One other project that the State Center Junior College system entered into, which we're a partner in, along with CalSTART, they started a commuter program for college students in West Side Fresno and Kerman area, bringing rural students into the city college, and they're going to be leasing 5 Bolts, B-O-L-Ts, not Teslas, to bring in college students with bus pass stipends from the junior college and also incentives to carpool. So I think you've got some concepts out there that are great. And again, we're going to be a part of that as a support mechanism for the driver training, dispatching, and so forth. So
Okay.
those are the primary ones that are going out there right now. And, you know, if you have any questions, you know, feel free to ask.
Okay. And maybe on a next call we can talk more about the Transformative Climate Communities Grant. That's, I believe it's like a $7.5 million project, and they're implementing a lot of the concepts that are kind of similar to what we're looking at in our grant, and there may be a way for us to kind of partner so that we can kind of maybe leverage our buying power for vehicles. You know, I think I spoke to Shared Use Mobility. I mean, this is all unofficial, but I mean, there just may be potentials for partnerships to lower our costs. So that's,
by all means, yeah.
That's something that we're looking at. Okay,
yeah.
so basically our concepts are Valley Go. I'll just go through this really quickly, since I think most of you are familiar with that. But Valley Go, it's car sharing and ride sourcing in affordable housing complexes. And we focused on the Dinuba, Cutler, and Orosi community of Tulare County, and the Lamont, Arvin, and Wasco communities of Kern County. And then Valley Flex, this is a technology platform that enables improved efficiency for multiple independently operated, demand-responsive transportation services in jurisdictions in Northeast Stanislaus and Southeast San Joaquin Valley. Okay, so I'm just going to go through this kind of quickly. So this is a little picture that, you know, that I have to try to, oops. Okay, actually I'm going to go back here. So the pilot communities in Kern and Tulare, they have relatively frequent transit service with stops in town centers, but residents live in kind of sparsely populated areas surrounding these towns, and kind of rely on dial-a-ride to get to transit stops. So in these communities, we found very high dial-a-ride costs. So that made, you know, we were able to see potentials for significant savings that could fund ongoing operations of the projects. More than one Dial-A-Ride van also serves these communities. So we found that in these communities it may be possible, to maintain one Dial-A-Ride for those with disabilities who need the specialized equipment, and perhaps retire another one and still have significant savings to the transit agency. So again, the intent of the pilot would be to serve enough Dial-A-Ride demand to retire one or more Dial-A-Ride vehicles. So we have, basically this slide shows we're partnered with self-help enterprises. We would install electric vehicle recharging infrastructure and lease vehicles with car sharing ride sourcing vendor. And we would have an interface that would include computer, cell phone, and kind of landline. And we would be partnering with the transit agencies to help us with dispatching. So the idea is, the car sharing is pretty affordable for use in these communities. I have it here at $15 an hour, but we're hoping, we kind of tested the concepts in focus groups recently, and there was a lot of enthusiasm for, if we could get to, say, $9 for 3 hours, and then the cost would go up to $5 after. That's what they're doing in the LA area, and residents and non-residents in these areas were pretty supportive. Ride sourcing, they would have the option perhaps for ride sourcing only to key destinations where they couldn't get to by transit during certain times of day, and then first and last mile would be really cheap if you're able to take a ride sourcing to transit. And we are also hoping that we could use kind of ride sourcing to help get people to the car sharing vehicles. That would be another way to do it. And here are the locations, the self-help enterprise locations. Okay, and then moving next to the pilot concept. So in these areas, in San Joaquin and Stanislaus counties, we found that they also had really high Dial-A-Ride costs. But then, there were a lot of different transit providers, and they weren't able to, retire one vehicle. There was no kind of slack in their system. So what we looked at here was a way to kind of combine all the available services and to dispatch them more efficiently. So they've done this in Denmark. They've used this kind of technology platform, and I'll show you a picture of it next. And they implemented this in rural Denmark, and they found a 20% reduction in the costs of 5 participating transit agencies. The program's been operating for over 15 years, and it's worked really well for them. So here is our Valley Flex concept. So you would basically, you want to aggregate your vehicle supply. I'll move over here. So our initial partners include these agencies, but the idea is that we would expand throughout the valley. The higher the volume of trips, the more cost savings that are available. So I'll go back here. So the vehicle supply, we would have Dial-A-Ride and deviated buses. The concept for the pilot is to expand available volunteer transportation organizations by using project funds to provide more subsidies for volunteers, and then also including trying to get ride sourcing and car sharing providers to participate in this kind of platform, Valley Flex platform. And then individuals would be able to, say where they are going, when they want to arrive and depart. They can contact via phone, computer, and cell phone. So they would communicate to the transit agencies. There would be some sort of dispatching. So then you would, you have this information on, where and when the demand is, and you also have this information about what your supply and your broader system is, and then you would try to match the demand and supply to minimize costs. And based on that, there's dispatching of vehicles and then communicating information to passengers. So there are several vendors right now that are participating. Many of you may be familiar. I think there's Translock, Demand Trans, and then there's another one we spoke to. But and they, many of these are in the initial phases of implementation, and they have a tablet that goes in your vehicles, and it's a cost for them to implement the system. So as part of this, we're partnering with Move. That works. It's I don't know what you would call it. It's kind of I don't know. Can you help me, Elizabeth? What we would call Move? How you call Moves? What you call that?
Or CTSA?
So Consolidated Transportation Services Agency. They work with the social service providers to coordinate transit.
That's right, and they have. So they have supported volunteer transportation organizations, but they've done a lot of this trying to. They have a lot of experience working with different stakeholders and kind of using those resources to provide drivers and transportation to those who really need it. So we're working with them for our stakeholder outreach and recruitment. And we're hoping that this concept could also help them reduce some of their administrative costs, like cutting their checks and some of the things that cost them a lot of money. This may be something that could reduce the costs for their volunteer transportation organization and kind of streamline what they're doing. And also just to note about the Green Raiteros, they're increasingly going towards this model of more looking at a volunteer transportation approach to what they're doing rather than a ride sourcing where, we've got, older people who are retired who are willing to kind of help other people in need and are willing to, drive a vehicle for the, 54 cents a mile, the reimbursement rate. And I think I may have mentioned this in Watertown, New York. That's been a very successful model. It's been funded largely through Medicaid transportation reimbursements, but they're able to use those reimbursements to cover their basic costs and then expand to help people with other services that they need. And Ray Leon's been working with the organizers of that system. Okay, so we went over this. And so next steps, and I think we've got about 15 minutes. So I'll just let you know where, we haven't spoken in a while. It was pretty intense working, I think, with everybody for a while, so I kind of thought we all needed a break. But in the meantime, as I mentioned, I've been doing, we completed 6 focus groups, 2 a resident and non-resident focus groups in all the VolleyGo pilot areas. Right now we've got students translating the transcripts, and I'll be drafting the summaries and releasing it to all our project partners. And it was very, there was a lot of enthusiasm for the program. It was really gratifying. So I think they were wanting to know how they could sign up to become drivers, and they were saying they would use it every day. I doubt they'll do that, but there definitely seemed like it could really serve an important need in the community. A lot of people really stressed out by their car payment, and they see this program as a way to lower their costs, lower their auto availability costs. So the next step, we've kind of completed that. We're just, next step is we're going to reach out to Move and also the kind of Translock and the Valley Flex type vendors, to talk about that, about doing some stakeholder outreach. And, I need to talk to, I haven't had a chance yet, but I'd like to talk to Stanislaus and San Joaquin COGS about, kind of doing some stakeholder outreach where we would present the concepts and see who, do some initial recruitment for participants and understand kind of what they need and what they would need to participate in their, what they think about the different programs. So we're also working right now, on trying to lay the groundwork for recharging stations, planning and some of the financing groundwork. And we're hoping in the spring to do background research on all the potential vendors prior to releasing the RFP. We want to know as much as possible so that we can be in a good position to evaluate the vendors who may respond, and to also release an RFP that will, we will get people who will bid on the project. So, and then I kind of wanted to open it up for you for questions. I don't know what's going to go on, if there's going to be another release in the spring of 2018, but if there's interest in our projects, in partners for applications for new sites for the next round of funding. And then the project officially ends in June 2018, and then we'll have a final report that kind of wraps everything up. So just kind of open it up. Questions, concerns?
Caroline, I just wanted to confirm that when you say the release of RFP, that's in relationship to the ARB grant.
That's right.
For additional work, right?
That's right.
Not this project, right?
Yeah, but I think the information we gain on the vendors will help everybody. Understanding the ins and outs and the how viable the different vendors are.
So is there more work that has to happen on the ground level in terms of focus groups or anything like that that the MPOs should be concerned about?
Well, it's largely the stakeholder outreach for Valley Flex, and that would be with San Joaquin and Stanislaus.
Okay, we don't need to reconvene down in Kern and Tulare again.
I don't think so. I mean,
okay.
I think we conducted 6 focus groups, so I spent summer and fall organizing and implementing those. And we also conducted a survey with the self-help enterprises. So I can, if there's interest, perhaps next month, we may want to take a break for Christmas, for the holidays in December, but our next meeting I could share the results of the survey that we conducted on unmet transportation needs and their reaction to different services.
So does the final report lay out the business plan for implementing the ARB component? Is that what we can expect the final report to do?
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Was it unclear or?
It was clear. Appreciate you taking the time to give us an update, and we can. This is Elizabeth with Stanislaus. We'll be sure to follow up with you to coordinate to discuss a little further, like you were talking about potential outreach and that kind of thing.
Okay. Okay. Great.
Yeah, and this is Rob from SJCOG. We'll also follow up on the Valley Flex item.
Okay.
Should I just call you directly or set up a time?
Sure. Why don't we do an email?
Okay, sounds good.
Carolyn, this is Tracy, President of COG. If I can give you some information on the TCC projects that you were talking about earlier and some details on what was finally submitted, if you want to talk.
Oh, that would be fabulous. I think the group would really like to hear about that.
Okay, I can send out a compiled list of projects that got submitted in Fresno's application, and then I'll indicate the one specifically that is related to what you guys are doing in the shared mobility piece of it, as well as where they are anticipating to locate some of the chargers.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Caroline, this is Linda in Bakersfield. Are we able to go ahead and start sharing the final draft of the report? Is that ready for?
Yes, it's posted now, and it's available it's posted officially on the website.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are any of the COGs that weren't able to, we weren't able to include in the last ARB round? Might there be any interest in the future or for future applications? I don't know if it's.
Yeah, this is Teresa from KCG.
Yeah.
I think we would be interested as we slowly grow, but just keep us in mind for next time whenever a project comes down the pike. We'll be interested. Thank you for your
And I remember, Teresa, you seemed like you might be a good site for, car sharing in the city center. And I think one of the things that we just need to have partners who are willing to kind of, say they're prepared to go forward and make a commitment as part of the grant application.
Right, I remember the discussion. So, yeah, that's been put on hold for a little bit. I haven't heard anything else since then. And thanks for the update on the Green Roteros. So we'll probably be kind of slowly tracking that as that progresses as well.
That's right, yeah.
Oh, thank you so much.
Far away from you. Yep.
Caroline, this is Elizabeth from TCAG. I know that we had tried to apply for the grant through ARB, but for some reason our county wasn't eligible. So, of course,
that was the CEC.
That was CEC.
Oh, CEC. I thought it was ARB.
No, you got the ARB funding.
Okay. We're working with some agencies already to move forward on a pilot, so we want to kind of be up and going. We haven't started, but we've been talking with a couple of companies, so we'll see where it goes.
Okay, and where are you considering those?
We haven't narrowed it down. Like part of the service would be to kind of focus in on what exactly our project would be. So we haven't necessarily gotten that far in our pilot programs yet, but we'll be considering that more.
Okay, so but you understand that you were funded for the Danuba, Cutler, or Rossi?
So we were told that we weren't. So I'm not sure. Did Mike or someone let us know that?
You were.
No, we weren't told that. Or I wasn't. I don't know. Maybe Ted heard.
But you weren't supposed to tell anyone, right?
Oh, okay.
Right. Yeah, I let the directors know, and they're supposed to convey that to their staff. That was at a point where the Air District didn't want us to really reveal at that point, but now they're fine with it.
Okay, because from the Air District one, I heard that we weren't eligible, and then I guess you applied for different, and so nobody told us that we were funded. I don't know if Ted knows that, so we'll have to follow up.
Yeah, so but this is for the Valley Go, so it's and I was told not to say anything, so but it's in the Danuba, Cutler, and Orosi, these self-help, so there would be car sharing and ride sharing pilots in those three areas. And we just completed focus groups there at these properties, self-help properties. If you want, I can
Well, TCAG, we just haven't heard anything or been in any group, so.
Okay. So, and then you guys, you know, you had the cost share, so that's, you know, we'll still need the cost share commitment for this grant. And if you want, Elizabeth, I can talk more about it with you. I'm talking right now to Kern about, we've been trying to navigate what are the options for the infrastructure, the recharging infrastructure. And I don't know if you want to get involved in those conversations as well. Southern California Edison, I believe, is the provider in the Dinuba, Cutler, Rosie area.
Carolyn, this is Teresa Nickel for QCAG. What is this about a recharging infrastructure grant from SoCal?
Okay, so basically you know, Linda Arata from Kern, I hope I'm not getting your last name wrong, but she knows a lot about this and has been basically helping me try to understand some of this. But apparently there are possibilities to you know, provide infrastructure and recharging equipments in multi-unit housing developments and also in workplace locations. And am I getting this wrong, Linda? And I think they can. There can be some restricted access now, but we're in conversation. We're trying to organize some more detailed conversations in Kern and PG&E to find out more about what might be available.
Okay, but it's really limited to housing.
Yeah, it's not limited. It can also go in work locations. And then there's also funding available from Valley Air, just in general for the equipment. And I may have gotten that twisted. I just wrote an email.
No, I think you got it right. It's basically incentives and rebates
right?
from incentives and rebate from PG&E and Valley Air District to help offset the cost of the installation of the chargers in these multifamily developments. There's certain caveats that apply in terms of public accessibility and stuff that we need to work through.
Okay. Is it all online on their websites, these grants? I should probably...
Easy to say, harder to find, but yes. Charge Up is the Air District rebate. That's pretty clear online.
Okay.
Teresa, I'll be happy to share what apparently, Linda told us not all the guidelines are available, so there's some, we don't know everything yet.
Right. The PG&E one's a little bit more mysterious at this point.
But there is also one through SoCal Edison, which is, I think, our area. So.
Yeah, so if you want, I can share any of the information.
Yeah, please put me on your email for that.
Sure, will do.
All right, thanks again. Take care.
So
I guess that wraps it up, Caroline. We're losing like a person every other second.
We're here. Hello?
Yeah.
Is anybody else? Michael?
There are a few.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess should we go?
We've reached 2 o'clock, so.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Please stand by.